Hello, everybody. We're live on Facebook saying hello to you. We'll give people a few minutes to arrive and tune in. Happy fall to everyone. This is Robin Luther. I'm here with you from Tosa Together, and I want to welcome everyone to Tosa Talks, Building a Diverse, Thriving Community. This is an ongoing Facebook Live series, proudly sponsored by our generous friends at Bostik. Tosa Talks features 3 monthly presentations designed to provide meaningful discussions around racial and social justice issues to support the work of building an inclusive, anti-racist community. Tonight's presentation features a discussion with individuals involved in a variety of non-traditional youth school programming offered right in Wauwatosa. As always, your comments and questions are so welcome. Please use the Facebook comments section to add your voice to the conversation. It's my pleasure now to introduce tonight's host, Catherine Reeby. Hello, Catherine.
Hi, Robin. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and happy Thursday to all of you. For tonight's talk, we are excited to welcome our guests, Mary Helen Schulte and Dean Hoyce. Mary Helen is the director of Kradwell School. She has been in education for 28 years, and this is her 15th year at Kradwell. She was born and raised in Wauwatosa and still resides here with her family. Dean Hoyce is a previous school psychologist, student services administrator, and is currently administrator of Wauwatosa Virtual Academy, as well as programs in a youth corrections facility, commonly known as Vel R Phillips School, a hospital, Children's of Wisconsin, and an alternative pathway to graduation program. Prior to Wauwatosa School District, he worked for Milwaukee Public Schools and its violence prevention program. So please join me in welcoming our 2 guests. Our 2 guests are going to tell us about their programs, and then we will have a time for questions and answers. So Mary Helen is going to start first, and I'm just going to share the screen and she will start.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate the opportunity to get to share about Kradwell tonight. You could go to the next slide, please. Our mission at Kradwell School is we're dedicated to providing a child-centered, flexible education environment that meets the diverse needs of our kids, their academic needs, emotional needs, and social needs. We do that through a shared effort between students, staff, and family. This empowers our students to be successful. Next slide, please. Kradwell is located on the Aurora Psychiatric Hospital grounds in Tosa. We are a part of Advocate Aurora Healthcare. We are the only private high school in Wauwatosa, and we serve students who struggle in a traditional school setting. We are maxed out at 54 students total and work with kids in grades 8 through 12. We're a very small school, and our classrooms are small as well. We have a 6 student to 1 teacher ratio where the curriculum is individualized for the kids, and our curriculum meets the Wisconsin state standards. All of our teachers are certified through the state. We have a mix of special ed and regular ed teachers, and our kids will receive a regular diploma after they have completed the state requirements of and 23 credits total. Next slide, please. Our program is unique in that our curriculum is tailored to the strengths and the needs of our students. Because we're small, we are able to offer instruction one-on-one, and our kids get individualized attention. We spend a great deal of time working to build relationships with our kids. Our kids have quite a bit of autonomy. We respect their differences, appreciate their differences. And we work with our kids to see their differences as their strengths. We offer a full slate of academics. And again, like I said, not only do we focus on academics and earning credits, but we want to work with the whole child, socially, emotionally, and behaviorally. One unique program, part of our program is our art classes are taught by an art therapist. So we like to empower our students to work through personal issues or coping strategies using creativity and art materials, if that's something that helps them. We do enroll students throughout the school year. And what our kids say to us is they really like the structure, the predictability. They feel safe and comfortable in our small school environment. Next slide, please. This is a breakdown of our students as of March 21, when we had a total of 54 kids. We call these descriptors or diagnoses. By no means is this statistical. It's a characterization. We get this information, it's shared with us by parents and guardians when students take a tour and have an intake meeting with us. Or if a student is placed with us through a school district, then we get that out of their IEP, which is their individual education plan. The descriptors can change over time. You'll notice that the top 6 are bolded, and those are the most occurring. So the majority of our kids suffer from anxiety and depression at some level, ADD and ADHD, kids on the spectrum or have sensory issues, students with trauma backgrounds, and sleep issues can lead to all of the diagnoses above. Learning disabilities like dyslexia, dysgraphia, processing difficulties, or nonverbal learning disabilities are not on this list, but are quite common in our population. And you'll notice the average number of descriptors or diagnoses that our students have is 3.7. Next slide, please.
Give me a minute. Not sure why it's not moving.
That's okay.
All right, excuse me. All the wonders of technology.
Gotta love it.
Okay.
That's why I had you do this, Catherine. The next 2 slides are statistics related to our enrollment. And this is as of this current school year, the last day of August. We started school this year. First student day was August 23rd. So we started a little bit earlier than the regular public schools. This is a breakdown of our enrollment by grade, by race, and by gender. And again, we max out at 54 students. The next slide is a breakdown of our enrollment by cities and by county. And you'll notice that our students come from all over the greater Milwaukee area and suburbs this year. You'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, it is a percentage of enrollment by placement. So there's 2 ways that students come to Kradwell. One way is if they're a private student, they will come to Kradwell just like any other private high school. The parents incur the cost of tuition and transportation for the family. We do offer some scholarship monies to offset the cost of tuition. Right now, this year, our tuition is $17,800. The other way students come to us is, you'll notice it says district place, and about 45% of our students are placed by school districts with us. If a school district feels they cannot meet the needs of a student within the district, they will reach out to us And then we work through the IEP process, the individual education plan process with the district, create a change of placement with that district, and then we become part of that IEP team as well. In that case, the school district incurs the costs of tuition and transportation. And the last slide is my contact information. So if anybody would have any questions, would like to reach out, you can get a hold of us at the information here. Our website is www.kradwell.org. And that's a great place to go to get any other details. That's all I have for tonight, Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I learned a lot because I didn't know much about Kradwell at all. So that's wonderful. So to our audience, please use this time to write your questions and put them in the chat. And right now we will hear from Dean. Let me stop sharing my screen. Okay.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you, Mary Helen.
Yeah.
I've seen Kradwell not just change lives, but really save student lives. I mean, they do really good work there. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay. So thanks for having me, Tosa Together. Before we get started, I just always like to kind of honor the space that we're physically occupying here in Wauwatosa and Milwaukee County, and those who came way before us. So I think like Robin had started off, you know, sometimes when we talk about these sorts of at-promise programs, it's like, what do you call them? Non-traditional certainly fits the bill. I've often said that for us, learning is taking place in unexpected places and in different ways. And really, whether it's Kradwell or the programs I'm going to talk about, really, these are students we have in schools every day, like all over the place. They're not coming from parts unknown. I mean, teachers in public schools, private schools encounter these students. However, circumstances are such where they need school in a different way, in a different place. But teachers encounter the issues, the challenges of these students throughout the education spectrum. It just so happens that we're in places and spaces where those students are kind of grouped together. I have an open door at the bottom because I know this past weekend was Open Doors Milwaukee. And these are all the types of places when I think about something like a Phillips School, which is at the Youth and Family Justice Center, or something like Children's Hospital. These are places where you just can't walk in the door and kind of see what's going on, maybe like a traditional public school. So I'm kind of considering tonight sort of like our open door of what's happening in some of these places and spaces. So for us, or what I oversee, it can be whether a alternative path to graduation, like the GED Option 2 program, where students can basically earn a high school diploma by showing competency in the GED tests and meeting other requirements. It could be through our statewide virtual school, Wauwatosa Virtual Academy. Just a couple years ago, choosing a virtual option for school was maybe not so common. And I think in the past, you know, how many months or so, virtual learning and home-based learning is kind of, you know, hit prime time, unfortunately, due to the pandemic. Schooling in Children's Hospital, where students might, due to medical needs or ongoing treatments that can last years. We have 2 teachers at Children's currently. But I'm going to talk a bit about Vel R Phillips School at the Milwaukee County Juvenile Justice Center. So what we have is students who are basically in custody waiting for court date, and sometimes multiple court dates. Currently, we have about 128 students there at Vel R Phillips School. And I always like to kind of kick off because I can't make the assumption that folks always know who Vel R. Phillips was. And when you talk about the namesake of a school to kind of live up to as sort of your guide and inspiration, you can't get higher than Vel R. Phillips. I mean, truly an incredible human from Milwaukee who just had so many firsts in her career. And we try to integrate parts of Vel's life and into some of our curriculum and whatnot to honor her. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Tosa Together has had some connections with Vel R. Phillips School. I've been on some of these, I've participated kind of as a participant in some Tosa Together meetings when I can, but Tosa Together has reached out and said, hey, how can we make connections with students in this school that people don't know about, but is like right embedded in Wauwatosa. And so very, very appreciative of times when Tosa Together has provided at one point like Valentine's cards for students. They made homemade masks and also had they wrote cards, and that means so much to students who are basically don't have a lot of touch points outside of the facility, and to know that, hey, you're noticed and you matter to folks right in Wauwatosa. So that's been tremendous. So at Vel Phillips, we've been focusing on culture as well as relationships and instruction. And I'm going to that second bullet point of just how do we treat students as scholars, and keeping that. They are in custody, they are in an incarcerated state, but we want to just change that thinking and having them see themselves as being beyond their current circumstances or their current mistake. They are more than that, and we try to really emphasize that. And how do we make the space humanizing? So I have a bunch of pictures later in the presentation just to kind of give you a flavor of what we've tried to do to make a very industrial correctional place feel like a school as much as we can. Also looking at relationships and instruction. When I first came on board about 6 years ago, we did some focus groups with students, and students said, school is fake and adults here don't care. And that's the type of stuff that makes you, as an administrator or educator or human, kind of keeps you up at night. You need to change that narrative. So we wanted to make sure that our instruction and what we did with students was meaningful, relevant, engaging, and real. I mean, students will call you out. It can be very blunt and honest. Thank God for that, because that helps us get better. I think as educators and adults, we should worry when students don't come to us with their honest opinions. That's when you should worry. And looking at mindfulness practices, being trauma informed, and also work that we've been doing around restorative practices. Again, making sure that our instruction is real and doing things that are relevant to students' lives. And we had a nice write-up a couple years back in Milwaukee Independent, just about some of the things we've been trying to do to sort of change that instructional narrative there at Vel R. Phillips. Restorative practices, not only with what we do with students, but what we do together as staff. How do we build community? How do we have restorative circles to share space and voice, and that people are heard? We'd like to think that that just happens and everyone has great communication skills, and we don't. We need some work on this, and doing our circle work helps us do that. This is actually a picture pre-pandemic. This was September 2019, where we actually worked with our restorative practices facilitator, and we did some offsite professional development. I love this picture because included in the picture is not just our Vel staff, but we've been able to include correctional officers who work side by side with us, but work through Milwaukee County. So we have this school district and Milwaukee County partnership in a shared space. And when we are able to also share learning together, that's powerful. So in terms of humanizing things, excuse me a second. Just getting like student work on the walls and partnering with different organizations around the arts. We worked on some murals with a nonprofit called Express Yourself Milwaukee that unfortunately they were around for like 19 years and then they had to disband just like about a year and a half ago. But that role of art and the therapeutic aspect of what that can be when someone is working with a child. Mary Helen mentioned Kradwell having like an art therapist. I mean, that is definitely a way to connect and engage and heal humans and especially students. Different themes. Again, you would think just having a glass whiteboard in a hallway is no big shakes for a school, and it isn't, but it was like moving mountains at our facility when we're kind of looking at the materials that are used and what's on the walls for safety and whatnot. So even students seeing things that look like something they would see in a school. When we talk about like student voice, this was another article. A couple years back, we actually did some podcast episodes. We had students do a podcast, and there's something about students sharing opinions, but doing it in such a way that there's a bunch of audio equipment and there's headphones. It just adds a different flavor to it, and students really stepped up. In fact, we were fortunate to discover that National Public Radio had a countrywide student podcast challenge going on that year for the first time ever, and we submitted our podcast, and we were a finalist. We were first runner-up, and that was really, really exciting for our students and staff. Also for Student Voice, we've been able to do a student-run newsletter, and then actually through the Neighborhood News Service have a partnerships where they publish some of the students' writings. As well as there is a local news source called Carved in Stone. That's all positive stories about Milwaukee, and it's led by Naisha Stone, and she's worked with our students. And so for students to see work that they've done like on a web page or published is it's empowering, and it's authentic. Again, just highlighting projects students do around careers. We have a garden. We took a unused courtyard and we wrote a grant through the Educational Foundation of Wauwatosa, and we were able to actually create raised garden beds. We started working with MSOE and had some of their students do like some design work, and then MSOE also very gratefully donated some money, and we were able to build a gazebo and just have a space that can kind of reconnect you to actually go out into this courtyard, smell vegetables and plants, and kind of get out of the facility a little bit, have some sunshine, find a quiet space, just making a restorative space, kind of behind concrete walls. We have a space for students who just need to chill. We call it the chill zone. And here's another thing. This looks like a guidance counselor's office from like 1982. Again, no great shakes, but for us in our facility to have like non-correctional furniture and rugs, and just for students to go in and just see that this is a place where they can just kind of sit and have a pillow and talk to our school counselor or school social worker. It's been powerful. On our walls, just showing our partners, showing our staff, encouraging literacy, doing read posters like that. Books are huge at Vel Phillips. Kids love to read. We have a movable sort of library that we have on carts that go to the students. We don't have like a set library room, But they just read a whole lot. And so we curate a collection, and we're purchasing and repairing like all the time. And then finally, just positive recognitions. And when you're trying to sort of have students think beyond why they're there, or maybe if they're reminded why they're there through, be it court or whatnot, just trying to show positive appreciation. And again, a little goes a long way. And something that looks like a certificate and is printed on cardstock and is presented to a student, it makes a difference. And I think Mary Helen could probably agree. Sometimes it's those low cost, no touch points with a kid that you just think is nothing, and it means everything. I've run out of hands to count the number of kids who received one of these and were in tears, just that something was noticed in a positive way. And when you talk about trying to make those connections, those are things that students remember, and we hope they never return to our school and our space. But when we have some students who, say to us, I wish I could attend here all the time, that's pretty bittersweet. But we'll get some of those messages. So that is really just a smattering again. Just wanted to put some pictures out there to give you a taste of things we're doing and how the space looks. And I welcome questions as well in the chat. And I will stop sharing. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you. I'm sure our audience learned quite a bit. Before we go to questions, could you just briefly tell us about the other two programs you're involved in, Dean?
Sure. Okay. So Children's Hospital, situated at Children's Hospital. I think I mentioned we have 2 teachers there, a lot of bedside instruction, a lot of working with the school's home school districts. So there's a lot of touch points with their home districts. Obviously with Children's, we're talking not just regionally, but statewide and even out of state. And again, what the hospital sort of expects from us is how are we doing some things that are normalizing an intense medical experience for a family and for a student. And school is normalizing. And sometimes I use that example when I talk to students in other areas. Sometimes the students who are at Children's Hospital are craving school just because everything else in their life can be somewhat unpredictable or new or kind of scary. And the idea of hey, I can work on some social studies with an adult for a while, it can kind of take you out of your circumstances a little bit. Wauwatosa Virtual Academy, again, statewide charter school, and Wauwatosa School District is the authorizer of that charter school. We also serve students who are within our district. Again, sometimes when students need a little something different in terms of their school day, they might need a full virtual option might fit that bill better than a full school day. Sometimes we do some hybrid arrangements. Again, maybe a student is in treatment. Maybe they're going through some things medically where their stamina can't have them in a building, or it exhausts them. And then we could say, you know what, let's build that up. Maybe you're at Whitman Middle School for half your day, and we supplement with some Wauwatosa Virtual Academy classes for the rest of the day.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So I have a question for both of you. And the question is, many high school students struggle with mental health issues at all different types of schools. What lessons, initiatives, or ideas can you share with leaders and teachers of more traditional schools that would be beneficial to students in our regular public schools? What can we learn from what you are doing with your students? Mary Helen, you want to start?
Sure. By the time students come to us, we've kind of been through the process. I had touched on relationship building and communication, definitely cornerstone of what we do here. Listening to kids, being real with kids, and normalizing their feelings, allowing them to share, and it's okay. You are who you are, and that's okay. You may need some additional help. We recommend therapists and that type of thing for families as well. But I really like to start with go and see your primary care doctor, because sleep with teens is a huge thing that can interfere with just their daily functioning.
Thank you, Dean.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think there's a lot of good work that is happening in schools currently. I mean, I think there's a lot of students that don't go Mary Helen's way or don't enter my realm of anything, because people have been intervening and making those relationships and whatnot. I think that sometimes we can think a little bit. I know we're doing a lot of talk about like what are the lessons we're learning from COVID. And I think the fact that people need people, and sometimes when we talk about or think about maybe some of those students who are more internalizing, right? So what Mary Helen showed in terms of just some of those internalizing, like anxiety, right? Just number one and prevalent, or kind of depressive symptomatology as well sometimes. I think that idea of like, what are we doing early on that's pretty systemic in schools, so that we're really kind of catching things early and creating those relationships earlier, I guess. And, students will do their best sometimes to avoid or sometimes push away, but they all really crave connection. And I guess I can think of in terms of, sometimes we'll have families, obviously statewide, seek us out for virtual school. And I will hear a family kind of talk about how they didn't have a great relationship with the last school at all. And, it was this and this and this and this that just didn't go well. And their child wasn't happy with the place, and just, they need something really different, so they're looking for virtual. And then we get to the point of the conversation where it's like, okay, they're going to shift over to us. And then they ask about like very traditional school things. What about clubs? What about groups? So even if they think like, oh, I just have to get out, I just have to just avoid. And it's like, yeah, but now what? Because I do want to join. What can I do? What can I join? How can I connect? So that's alive and well. I mean, maybe even more so when students are kind of struggling, but because you have the struggle and maybe a little bit of that symptomatology that sort of leads things off, we don't quite maybe dig into that connection piece.
And I think schools are doing a better job, or I think we're all more aware of building resiliency within our kids, especially as we've worked through the COVID pandemic, being able to handle adversity and kind of hanging out in that space where you're uncomfortable and learning to deal with that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great insights. So, Dean, we have a question. Is Vel Phillips the only school of its kind in Milwaukee County or southeastern Wisconsin?
Racine has a facility for youth. There's the House of Corrections in Franklin that will have sometimes 17-year-olds may be there, and I guess like early adults, like that 18 to 24. But as far as like, and there's the jail downtown, but as I mean, we're pretty much it. There may be some high supervision, almost like group home type placements within the city, but it's not those aren't like secure settings.
Okay. And I guess this is maybe not a follow-up question, but perhaps related. How do you manage the flow of kids into and out of Vel Phillips? And I assume time at the school could be very short term for some students. So like how short is the shortest time a person spends with you, and how long would the longest time probably be?
You could have a student for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 10 months. And it is, when you have that in and out, you know, it's someone's first day, it's someone's last day. And, you know, it's traumatic enough to be there, to be in custody there. And so now you're trying to, like, as a staff, we'll do like a welcoming for new students. If it's their first day, we'll kind of meet with them early in the morning, kind of preview the day, you know, introduce them to the fact that, hey, we have school and I'm going to be one of your teachers. But that is something that when you have that constant churn, you know, we're aware of it. It's one of those things where we want to do really, really good work regardless of length of stay. But it's something we're used to. We are seeing students that are staying a bit longer. And so you do have that extra time, but that's something that can cut both ways, because the longer a student is there, what that does to them in terms of maybe their outlook, or maybe how their case is going or continuing to go, can definitely affect things for sure. So yeah, I think we've gotten used to that churn, and we've tried to mitigate it by doing more welcoming things with students.
Okay, thank you. Mary Helen, we have this question. With such a small enrollment at Kradwell, how do students on the wait list receive appropriate services? Actually, is there a wait list would be a question. And does Kradwell have any outreach programs in the community for non-students?
So we will, when we get full, which we will be full next Monday, we do start a wait list. So typically the students on our wait list are at other schools. They're enrolled at other schools. It's just not going well for them. As far as outreach specifically for the school, we really don't have anything. We work pretty closely with, if our kids on campus are in the day treatment programs and that kind of thing, we work with them.
So your maximum number is 54?
54, yeah.
Okay, and about how many staff do you have, or teachers?
We have 9 teachers, and we also have 1 teacher's aide.
Okay, okay. And what was the name of, I don't know, has Aurora changed names? I'm trying to remember the name of the
Aurora is now Advocate Aurora Healthcare.
Okay,
They
okay.
have joined forces with, so we have facilities meaning hospitals and healthcare in Wisconsin and Illinois now.
Okay, so Advocate Aurora essentially owns the school?
Right, so we are part of Advocate Aurora. We are the only school in their entire system. And so we are all employees of Aurora Healthcare,
Okay.
and partner with them. So that's really what a big part of my job is I'm kind of the liaison between the school and mainly our hospital here on campus.
Okay. And who was Kradwell? Or why is this school named
Kradwell is named after the original doctor that was here on campus way back when it was the Milwaukee Psychiatric Hospital, the sanitarium.
Okay.
Kradwell itself, the school has been in service since 1962. So we really kind of are the best kept secret in Wauwatosa. I was born and bred here, grew up here, never heard of it until a student at a former school I worked at was coming here. And I thought, well, what the heck is that? I got to check it out and find out. And it's been in my backyard. Never even knew about it.
Okay. Is it typically full, the enrollment at Kradwell?
This is actually our first year that we have been full this early in the school year.
Okay.
We are finding there is more and more need and more kids suffering mental health issues that prevent them from being successful in a traditional school.
Okay. So we have a question. What grade levels are offered at Kradwell? Are students at Kradwell generally enrolled for a limited time, or do students tend to stay at Kradwell for their entire school career?
We work with kids in 8th grade through 12th grade, and it really is the length of their stay with us is as individualized as the curriculum is. The sooner a student comes to us in their high school career, they are more likely to transition back to their community school. And that's the goal that we want for them as well. Some kids will come to us and they've burned every bridge and they're going to finish with us. Some kids do come and find it is the best fit for them, the best environment for them to learn in. They start to thrive in. They get much healthier. Families see that reflected at home, and they will stay with us through the career. So it really runs the gamut.
Okay. So there's a question, what programs exist that are similar to Kradwell for grade school and or middle school? Anything else in the southeastern Wisconsin area?
We're really unique in the fact that we are, I say an academic first program with behavior social supports. Most other alternative programs out there for middle school and grade school are behavior first, kind of academics second. Behind that, those programs want behavior in check so kids can go back to their homeschool and be successful academically. When parents do call of younger kids, I say reach out to your local public school district because they have the resources to help kids with special education needs. First and foremost, they have the most. There are some programs locally, the Richardson School is one, Bloom 360 is another program locally, but there are not many.
Okay. Wow. And I think there is a huge need.
Yeah.
Dean, we have a question for you. Do students at Vel Phillips bond with others even though there is an in and out flow? And then what kind of social options help them make connections?
So we have students, we will do some community building things, obviously within our classrooms and classes with students. We try to do a lot with community partners. So it's a way where beyond just having school staff, having other adults from the community coming in and making connections with the students, sometimes for social options and other options for when a student is released. So the idea of, hey, when I was in Vel Phillips, I went to school and it was through school where I met maybe, some individuals from PEP Nation, sports leadership. And then when the student is released, they have information about that group and they may seek out, maybe some of the facilitators or individuals that they met. And I think that's pretty satisfying to me, because to hear these folks say, hey, guess what? so-and-so sought me out, and now I've been able to find a summer job for him through what we do, and so we'll do a lot of that. We've done a lot of things, particularly we have a very small girls population, but we've made a lot of connections. There's some groups, My Sisters Keep Her is one, Foundations for Freedom is another, Social Butterfly, Fresh Start Learning. So just trying to bring in programming that, quite honestly, it's like what any good school would do, right? I mean, schools bring in guests, they bring in experts, they bring in, folks with lived experiences. And so, the thought of keeping our doors open to that, to help make social connections once students are released has been it's been a priority area for us past couple of years.
Okay, thank you. I have another question for you. This person writes, am I correct to assume Vel R. Phillips is residential? Can you talk about the challenges that creates? Do the lines blur between school time and non-school time?
It blurs a little bit. We've done some special programming in the evenings as a school, but generally sort of after the school day, it's there's a lot of things they're scheduled into in terms of whether it's professional visits, and sometimes the county does programming for the students, like after school hours and things like that. So to call it residential, it is 24/7. And like I mentioned before, we have the relationship with Milwaukee County and the correctional officers. And sometimes when we do that evening programming, we'll have the correctional officers obviously like right there, but it's neat to have them kind of engage with students maybe in a somewhat different way, because we have like volunteers coming in and it is a little more social. It kind of, it adds some good variety and some good engagement like during the evenings, in addition to whatever recreation time they get. But you have to, we've said downtime is the enemy. And I don't care if you're like in a correctional facility, or if you're in a boarding school out east. If you've got a bunch of adolescent aged males not directing their activities and energies, shenanigans happen. So keeping them, productively engaged and doing things is a key.
Okay, thank you. So I have a question for both of you. I'm watching our time. We're going to have to wrap up soon, though I have more questions, but how are parents engaged in both schools is one question. The second question is, are there ways members of the community can support the work at Kradwell or Vel Phillips? And I'll take the community to mean like individual citizens, as opposed to, organizations like Dean just mentioned. So how are parents engaged in both schools, and how can members of the community support the work at Kradwell or Vel Phillips, like volunteer, can they come into the facility, things like that? So Mary Helen, we'll start with you, please.
Sure. Volunteers that become part of that would work at Kradwell go through the volunteer process through Advocate Aurora. So they do volunteer training and that kind of thing. One neat thing we've brought in is the therapy dogs have been coming through. So they've been trained and coming in, and the kids go absolutely nuts. They love it. As far as parent engagement, parents can really be as engaged as they want to be with us. Our school day is pretty focused, and pretty, the kids are in the classroom. Because our kids come from all over, we don't have extracurricular activities. We don't have sports teams and that kind of thing. So we try and do theme events. October is anti-bullying month, so we will have activities and things for that. We welcome parents we did just have a food truck on campus, and we had some parents attend that as well as our kids. So we welcome it. It is difficult, but as involved as a parent wants to be, we are always open to it.
And I had mentioned to you once before that I'm a Master Gardener volunteer, and I know there's a garden and there are Master Gardeners who do go and volunteer in that space.
Yeah, we have a gardening and nutrition class, and those students work along with the Master Gardeners out in the back. It's neat.
Dean, do you?
Yeah, it's for us, it's a little interesting. I think the parent involvement piece, because of certain communication limitations we have with reaching out, we keep it pretty focused in terms of having parents really involved with us for the IEP, the special education process. Probably about 50% of our students have individual education program plans. And so to do right by that process requires parent involvement. And what's neat is that's sort of like our real legit way of the school making that reach out. Not necessarily the county because of the court case or things like that. We can keep it really kind of centered on, hey, this is about your student and their needs and their education. And even if they're not with us for a long time, they're going to be going to another school. So let's do a little snapshot now of their plan and their program. And so that's where we probably have like the most parent engagement, where we're able to make those reach outs for parents. As far as like, I think there was a question about like volunteer. My info can be shared out. What we've done pre-COVID is we've had like some volunteer nights that are very, very focused. To have volunteers in during the day, that's not happening. It's not, a distraction. It just isn't a good thing. So to try to problem solve through that, I said, well, we can drill down and have what we call like some literacy book read nights that we do with our girls group, our girls living unit. And that's allowed volunteers in the evening to come in a very structured, kind of focused way. But I am open to other new and creative ideas of how people might want to be involved. Like I said, Tosa Together has done things with like just letter writing, or if folks have areas of expertise or community connections where they think, hey, this might be something neat for students at Vel Phillips, I would be all for it.
Thank you. So Tosa Together exists to make Wauwatosa a welcoming place for all who live, work, school, and play here. And I would like us to end with the two of you telling our audience why Tosans should care that these programs exist in our community and how they relate to equity. So Dean, I think we'll start with you this time.
Well, equity is giving people really what they need. And that what they need isn't going to be the same or a one size fits all. And I think whether it's talking about Kradwell or my collection of programs, this is meeting needs. Or even if it's a place or a space that a student doesn't expect themselves to be in, once they are there, how are we providing equity in terms of personalizing a school experience in those places and spaces? Why should Tosans care? I think Mary Helen spoke to it. I mean, there's a lot of things out there. There's lots of lives being lived in Tosa, right within our boundaries, that are exceptional and just unknown. And I think the more that these stories are kind of put out in terms of like who's within Wauwatosa, and what that range is. And, even if you just kind of say, well, there's schools in Wauwatosa, I think tonight we're showing, like, even when you say schools in Wauwatosa, even that isn't just limited to maybe what you think in terms of parochial, and Wauwatosa schools. It's definitely expanded. And I think going along with that volunteer question, if people choose to focus some of their volunteer energies, and they want to do something within our community, but maybe in a different way or a different place, now we exist. So.
Thank you, Dean. Mary Helen?
And I think just to piggyback on what Dean's saying, we're working with kids within our communities to make them healthier, to make them more productive, to make them better citizens. And they're going to be out there, part of our communities as well. And we do that by giving them the individual attention, individualizing their schoolwork, building relationships, teaching that resiliency so that they can carry it into our communities in a positive way.
Thank you. This has been a really wonderful hour or so. I've learned a lot about your two programs, and I do thank you for your work. I'm sure our audience thanks you as well. So our viewers, I hope you will join us in thanking Mary Helen Schulte and Dean Hoyce. Thank you both for taking time to talk with us tonight and for sharing all your great information, experiences, and insights.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you to you, our Facebook audience, for your time and interest in tonight's discussion. I'm sure you've learned a lot like I have. And as always, a special thank you to our generous friends at Bostic, whose support makes the entire Tosa Talks series possible. Remember, you can find a recording of tonight's presentation and all Tosa Talks presentations on the Tosa Together YouTube channel. Please join us again on Tuesday, October 12th, for a presentation with Bethesda on their plans to bring integrated housing for developmentally disabled adults to Wauwatosa. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to Tosa Together anytime through our Facebook page, our website, or by emailing us directly at tosatogether@gmail.com. This is Catherine Reeby with Tosa Together, and it has been my pleasure to be here with our special guests, as well as with all of you. Good night.